the release of Incredibles 2, we now have 20 Pixar movies. That means it's time to stop and rank all 20 Pixar movies from the worst to the best. Now, before I get started, go ahead and tell me down below in the comment section, how do you rank the Pixar movies? Which ones do you love? Which ones do you hate? And everything in the middle. Here's the deal. We're not going to agree on our list because Pixar has made a lot of awesome movies, and it's very difficult to pick a top 10 when they've made over 10 great movies. So as we dive into all of this, let's be respectful. Let's understand these are hard lists to make and talk about our differences. That's the fun part. We're not going to agree, and we can understand where other people are coming from. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is going to be Cars 2. For me, this movie feels an awful lot like a direct-to-video spin-off, except with a gigantic budget. The combined shift in focus from Lightning McQueen to Mater, as well as the genre shift to kind of this spy comedy, makes the movie feel to me like they're trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator as well as their youngest audience possible. For that reason, there's not really anything in this movie that I enjoy or respect besides the visuals, and for that reason, it comes in last place. At number 19 is Brave. Now, this movie was an interesting change of direction for Pixar that I don't think really paid off. It starts off feeling a little bit like a lesser Disney movie. Then when the big plot twist happens in the movie, it started to feel to me like a bad Disney knockoff. The general setup and design for the movie had a lot of potential, but I did not like the execution on this one. So those two bottom movies are the only two Pixar movies that I would actually give a thumbs down to. The rest, I think, are good to excellent. Coming in at number 18 is The Good Dinosaur. Now, I think this is a decent enough piece of family entertainment that has some gorgeous visuals. The first time I saw this movie, I was just blown away by how good the water looks in this film. Now, this movie had a few of the same problems that Brave does in that it feels a bit off-brand for Pixar from the way that it looks, the animation style, the kind of pedigree of the storytelling. I don't think that the emotional beats hit quite right, so the movie, while being entertaining and being fun, rang a little bit hollow for me, where most Pixar movies have a lot of depth and weight to them. Number 17 is A Bug's Life. For me, this is probably the least impactful or memorable Pixar film. Like, I can appreciate that it's a modernization of Aesop's Fables with bugs as the lead characters in it, but there's no specific character for me that pops, that's memorable, and I don't hear a lot of other people talking about it. While it's not a movie I have any big criticisms for, I also don't have any big praises for it because I just don't think about it very often or ever want to rewatch it with my kids. At number 16 is Cars 3. In general, this movie is a pretty nice return to form for the Cars franchise. Probably sticks a little bit too close to the Rocky III Talladega Nights plot template that it's following, but it works for this franchise. The big problem here is that the third act twist is telegraphed so far out in advance. As soon as a specific character is introduced, you know exactly where this movie is going. And the specific way that this twist happens and the point at time that it happens is one of the most ridiculous things inside of any of the Pixar movies. The twist itself isn't stupid. It makes sense in light of the movie as a whole, but when it happens is very poorly executed, and that really pulled me out of the movie. Number 15 is Monsters University. Now, this is a pleasant enough film, but it's also probably the safest movie that Pixar has ever made. The formula is quite simple. Take a set of very likable characters with some great voice talent, match them up with a tried and true story template, in the case here, Revenge of the Nerds, and you'll get a very watchable, very fun film. And that's what this is. Not every movie has to be a home run. This movie's not a home run, but it definitely gets on base. Coming in at number 14 is Finding Dory. For me, this movie had all the fun and the charm of the original film, while not necessarily feeling as fresh or heartfelt as that film. Probably touches on a few too many of the plot beats of the original film all along the way. Where this movie really shined for me was when it focused on Dory and her parents, whether telling her backstory of kind of seeing where the story kind of concludes towards the third act of the movie. That's where this movie really found its stride and kind of hit the right notes. Number 13 is Cars, a breezy tale of a big city racer getting stuck in an old-fashioned small town populated with a bunch of very pleasant characters. The themes here about humility and American nostalgia are simple yet effective. I don't think this movie necessarily hits the emotional depths of some of the movies that are higher up on this list, but it hits enough right notes to make it a very rewatchable entry into Pixar's filmography. Number 12 is Ratatouille, a weird concept for a movie about a rat being trained by a ghost to cook food while using a man he remote controls by pulling his hair is shockingly down to earth in its themes and relatability. Brad Bird finds a way to take this strange story and actually connect it with real, relatable emotions. But not only that, it's filled with vibrant, high-energy sequences and chases in a movie that's about cooking and family legacy. Now, while this is a movie that I'm impressed by what Brad Bird was able to do with it, at the same time, it's not a movie I put in all that often or would choose to watch all that often. Coming in at number 11 is Coco, possibly the most lighthearted and fun movie about death that I've ever watched. It has some stunning, rich visuals throughout the movie, some great songs throughout it. For me, the movie was a little bit predictable. I was able to guess better than normal where the plot was going and who was going to turn out to be what as things were going along. But overall, this movie hits on a lot of notes. It's very emotionally resonant, and it's a movie that's tough to not start crying as you get to the end of it. Bringing us into the top 10 is Up. The first 10 minutes of this movie is some of the best visual storytelling ever brought to the screen. It's so emotionally resonant and concise that at times it can overshadow the rest of the movie. And that's not at all because the rest of the movie isn't great, because it is great. It's just that that first 10 minutes is so efficient that it can make the rest of the movie feel less impressive because of it. Now, I was definitely one of those people that said Up is all about the first 10 minutes up until recently, where my kids really got into this movie. So I've rewatched it many times and grown to respect the movie as a whole as we watch a man who has a lot of regrets about life that leads him to go on this wild, crazy adventure in the film. I'm not crazy about where exactly some of the main villain plot lines go, but overall a movie just filled with all sorts of emotion, charm, and such a unique cinematic experience for a family film that kids and adults can enjoy. Number 9 is Inside Out. For me, when I first heard about the concept of this movie, I thought Pixar had lost their minds. And then I saw the movie and it kind of blew my mind as it started to explore our minds and how our emotions work. And in particular, kind of visualizing the process of what puberty kind of is like and the deconstruction of the simplicity of childhood and the far more complex nature of adult thought and adult emotions. I just loved what they were able to do with this movie. And all along the way, you've got a great voice cast, all sorts of fun adventures to go along the way. And while this isn't a movie that I put in all the time, it is a movie that just wows me with what they were able to do with the storytelling and ideas that they jam-packed into this film. Coming in at number 8 is WALL-E. This movie contains another stellar example of visual storytelling in that the first half of this movie has virtually no dialogue, and you can fully understand what's going on, what these robots are feeling, and actually care about this little romance kind of going on in the film. From there, it kind of does this gigantic twist and change of direction for the story. And as they head up into space, the movie finds new ways to kind of be emotionally resonant as we see where humans are at and what their state is like, and add new conflict, new interesting dimensions into all of it. This to me is just such a fascinating movie to exist, because on paper, this is not a good kids movie, yet somehow their storytelling is so good and their way of being able to find the tension, find the way to connect with us in the smallest of details, even with a robot or a little plant. That's what makes Pixar special, and you see that with this movie. Coming in at number 7 is Toy Story 2. Now, this movie is a great follow-up to the original film that finds a way to continue exploring these ideas of childhood nostalgia, especially the section on Jesse's backstory that, once again, is a phenomenal example of visual storytelling that finds a ways to pull at your heartstrings while telling the story about a toy getting left behind. But we start thinking about our own toys that we've left behind, that we've lost, that we've forgotten about, that we've moved beyond. And that's powerful storytelling. Throw into the mix a great villain in Stinky Pete the Prospector, the character that doesn't want to be played with. He wants to go off and be a part of this collection, and it just ties the themes together really nicely in a way that you really don't expect from a movie like this. This is the part in time where this list gets really hard because these are all amazing movies. It's painful to have this one at number 7 and not higher up. Number 6 is Monsters, Inc., the movie that probably has some of the best on-screen chemistry between the characters, where you've got two monsters and a baby, Mike, Sully, and Boo, and they are just so much fun to see them go on their adventures. But what this movie does once again really nicely is find a way to explore some ideas and have some themes that you can actually learn something from about how it's better to focus on the positive rather than the fear and the negative. All of it ties together to just make for a movie that has some of these moments where you realize the negativity of monsters scaring children while being heartfelt in the next moment, and all along the way you are laughing and having a good time. At number 5 is Toy Story 3. If Toy Story 2 is a great sequel to the original one, this is an even better closeout of that original trilogy that continues to explore these ideas of childhood and nostalgia while adding to it this layer of growing up and finding new uses for things. And that kind of leads into the themes, the conflict throughout this movie as they go to this daycare, as it leads into the climax of the movie where you start to think, are they actually going to kill off all of these characters? Are they about to be incinerated? And as you step back in the movie, you know they would never do that. But the movie's crafted so well that as you're watching it, you get a little bit terrified. You start to cry a little bit as you think that Buzz and Woody might actually die inside of this movie, but it finds a way to just kind of land this trilogy so well and have such a wonderful send-off that encapsulates everything that the three movies were about while saying something new at the same time. This is a great third movie in a trilogy. Coming in at number 4 is The Incredibles. Once again, Brad Bird makes a movie that is just jam-packed with energy, creativity, world building, and just creating an atmosphere that's fun to be in. He went for kind of this 60s James Bond feel for the movie while telling a superhero story, which makes the entire movie feel unique. It has a plot line about a family that feels very relatable while talking about superheroes, which is very exciting. And Brad Bird is a master at crafting these sequences that are thrilling to watch and captured in a way that just keep you at the edge of your seat. And part of what makes this movie so special for me is that it's an original story with original characters, with an original world, and it's not only a great Pixar movie, it's a great superhero movie, and it's a great movie, just period. Bringing us into the top 3 is Incredibles 2. For me, this movie takes everything I loved about the original film, all the fun, all the world building, an amazing score, and adds to it a story that I resonated with a little bit more than the original film. I found the screenslaver, the way the character worked, the motivation behind what was going on, to be a little bit more compelling than Syndrome. I had a few issues with Syndrome as a character and his motivation. That particular trope for a villain isn't something I particularly care for. And for that reason, I watched Incredibles 2 and it was like, this is the movie I wanted The Incredibles to be. It just nudges it out just a little bit by having that story that just hit all the right notes for me while having all of the packaging of the first film that I loved. So this movie makes it into my top 3. Our runner-up is Toy Story. The original Pixar film is still one of the best over 20 years later. And that's because they came up with this amazing set of characters that you just want to spend more time with, and they package it with this world and this set of themes and this tone about childhood nostalgia that's populated with the toys of our childhood that just makes for an adventure that you want to go on, that hits you on so many different levels. Even as you start to have this insane neighbor kid that's tearing up toys, you start to think about your own toys in those moments. As you see Woody being replaced by the newer, cooler toy, you start to think about your own toys and how those sorts of moments happen, and you start emoting and having compassion for inanimate objects. That's great storytelling. That's a movie that is working, and this is the movie that started it all. So for me, it is my number 2 pick. But coming in first place for me is Finding Nemo. I don't know if it's because I watched this movie for the first time after I already had a son, but this movie just hit me in all the right places, as it's a movie that's really about parenting. It's about learning to let go, and that's really what parenting is all about. And that's what this movie is all about, a scared father, but he goes on a journey where he has to learn to let go. That's the true loving thing to do for his son. All along the way, you have these amazing characters like Dory that we meet that are fun, they're charming, they're likable. All of this makes for a movie that hit all the right notes for me. Even the musical score in some of these moments, as there's little realizations in Dory's head, it hits just right for me. So for me, this is my number one Pixar film. So there you have it. That's my ranking of all 20 Pixar movies. How about you? How do you rank the Pixar movies? Tell me down below in the comment section. Tell me which ones you love, which ones you hate, and everything in between. And remember, we're gonna disagree. You're gonna think I'm crazy with some of my placements, and that's the fun part. Tell me what you disagree with. Tell me which ones you love and why. That's where we kind of get diversity, understand where other people are coming from, and we can have fun as movie fans that don't have to agree about everything, but we can talk about this set of movies that we all love. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, just like this one that you're watching right now. But the key thing is, I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. I really do read the comments. I really do respond to as many as I can. So please join me in the comment section. Let's have a lively yet respectful conversation down there. And as always, thank you so much for watching.